Thank you, Justin. 6 minutes to 9. There's a new campaign being launched today to protect our privacy. Do we need another law? Well, this one is aimed at protecting children specifically. And it's been launched by Hannah Weller, wife of the famous mod singer Paul Weller. And I'm joined by her and by Ian Murray, who's president of the Society of Editors, and he's also editor-in-chief of the Southern Daily Echo. Hannah Weller, why do you want to? You've had a case yourself involving your children, and you took the Daily Mail to court and you won. Tell us about that.
Well, about 18 months ago, my children were out on a family day out with their father, and a man followed them around the streets and took photographs of them, and those photographs subsequently were published online. This obviously didn't sit well with us as parents, and we decided to see if we could do something about it. And what I learned in that process was that if you find yourself in that position, you have to go to court and you have to, endure that procedure and potentially pay a lot of money for the privilege.
And it's too late by then anyway, because they've been published.
Yes, absolutely. And so, there are already lots of guidelines in place that say that it's not okay to do that, but none of them work.
Well, there's a code
evidently.
of practice, isn't there, more than just guidelines? I mean, there is an enforced code of practice.
There is an enforced code of practice which is not adhered to. It quite clearly says that you must not use parents' fame or notoriety as sole justification to print personal information about a child's private life. Yet they continue to do it almost on a daily basis.
But we do see we see an awful lot of children's faces pixelated now, don't we? Never would have happened a few years ago, so things surely are improving.
They may be improving for some people, but the fact remains that the decision about whether or not to obscure or pixelate the facial image of a child lies with the discretion of the editors, and I believe that it shouldn't be their final choice. It should be made law so that the decision is not theirs to make.
A lot of people would agree with that, Ian Murray.
I think a lot of people would agree with that, and I think that virtually, if not every editor in the country, would have sympathy there with Mr. and Mrs. Weller, and agree that children should be protected. And I think
but hers weren't.
Well, I think you can bring in all kinds of laws, John. You can bring in all kinds of laws. You can bring in laws against burglary. It won't stop burglary. But in this case,
that's not quite the point.
Well, let me just point out that with this, that I think Mrs. Weller has just basically said that the recourse to law actually worked. Actually, there are the restrictions that are already there.
But we shouldn't have to go through that process in the first place.
Well, you would have to go through the process simply if there were criminal laws, which is, I think, is what you're referring to there.
Oh, but surely an editor would think, well, maybe they think twice already. They think 3 or 4 times before they publish something in defiance of the criminal law.
It surely would work as more of a deterrent if it was a criminal offence.
Well, obviously, it certainly would, but it would also act as a deadening on freedom of expression in this country.
Children?
Now, absolutely.
I'm sorry, but the freedom of expression of the press, the interests of the press do not outweigh the interests of safety of children.
Let me just give, if I can just finish the sentence.
Go on.
I fully sympathise with Mrs. Weller's point. Let me just give you an example this morning, that once you bring in a law of this case, then you have the laws of unintended consequences. I sat in your lobby this morning, I saw the BBC News, it was showing pictures from Mosul of children and families fleeing. Now, did the BBC attempt to get permission of the parents there? Of course you didn't. And you might say, well, that's an absurdity. Of course that wouldn't apply. But if there is a strict law, there is a strict law. What about broadcasting?
Don't you have to apply a wee bit of common sense, though? I mean, Mrs. Weller's children playing in the park is rather different from refugees fleeing from a hideous attack.
Yes, but the law is the law, and that's the point. In a civil case, basically, then you can basically look at these kind of things and decide, basically, has there been an effect? Has this basically done that? Once you break the law, you break the law.
Surely you could frame the law in such a way that you couldn't confuse. You wouldn't confuse children playing in a park with children fleeing from war.
I would disagree, Mrs. Weller. The more simple you try and make a law, the more basically you have the laws of unintended consequences, and the more draconian it becomes. And
but
basically,
what's the problem? Sorry to interrupt you, but can you just explain to me what is the problem with pixelating the facial images of children?
I think, well, first of all, I think you're saying that basically that parents and guardians can say, no, we disagree, we can allow our children. So you've got the celebrities saying, well, in our case, we wish to use our children to basically further our careers.
Yeah,
so
and that decision should lie with the parents.
Let him finish the point, if
Absolutely
you would.
agree there. But I think the underlying this, and I appreciate we are running out of time, the underlying of this thing is it's basically a much bigger issue here. We're talking here, I think this incident happened online. Well, all that matters with online now is basically it will disappear out of the country. Are we talking here about affecting things that that simply will move to foreign things. The Huffington Post, for instance, is not based in this country. What about Twitter? What about Facebook? And I would say that I must pick you up when you say this happens on a daily basis. I completely disagree. I think it's very rare that this actually happens. It happens more often with people who are out and about. They see a celebrity, perhaps with their children. They take a snap. They put it on Twitter. They put it on Facebook, and it's published in that way.
And maybe they would refrain from doing that too if they knew it was a criminal offence.
I think once you've got thousands upon thousands of people committing offences, I think the best way is to actually go with the regulations that are there and to take your case to IPSO, the Independent Press Standards Authority organisation, which basically will listen. Yes.
All right. Well, we'll see about it. So it's very new indeed. Hannah Miller and Ian Murray, thank you both very much.